Okay, so my name is Willy Maley and I'm going to talk about Maggie's and me. Maggie's and me go back 2 years. I've been visiting the cancer centre up at Gartnail for 2 years now. My story starts on the 11th of July 2023. What happened that day was that I got a phone call at 5 o'clock from my GP to tell me that I had cancer. He didn't like telling me on the phone. It's quite unusual, I think, to be told on the phone, but he just looked at my blood test and he had looked at an x-ray that I'd had the week before for back pain, and he was very concerned that I had cancer that had gone into my spine because I appeared to have a collapsed vertebra. So I had to pack, I was told to pack a bag and go straight to the hospital, and there I had to lie like a ming vase with a crack in it, on the assumption that I had cancer in my spine. The next morning it became clear after an MRI that the cancer was on my spine but not in my spine, and that was a massive relief. That was like being taken to the edge of a cliff and then being told that you could sit back on a bench and enjoy the view. What happened next was that I got a series of bone scans and blood tests. My oncologist said to me, "You've got metastatic prostate cancer. Do you know what that is?" I said yes. I was lying. I didn't know what it was. Nor did I understand the difference between the big C, so-called, and the big M, what metastatic cancer actually entailed. So I was lined up for a CT scan, another MRI and a biopsy. Before the biopsy, which I had to wait for, I phoned up. I kept calling it an autopsy, Freudian slip. I phoned up and to the receptionist's delight when I phoned up the hospital and said, "I'm supposed to be getting an autopsy." She said, "You won't be getting an autopsy." And I said, "I was told I would get an autopsy." She said, "No, you won't get an autopsy. Do you mean a biopsy?" I did. Then after the biopsy, I got told that my particular cancer was a Gleason 10. The cancer is graded on a score of 1 to 10, and Gleason 10 is the most advanced and aggressive. So that was quite bad news. It meant it wasn't operable, it wasn't curable, it was terminal, it was stage 4, that I would get chemo, but chemotherapy would be used to control the disease, and that would be it, and hopefully buy me more time. So I was scheduled to get this treatment called triplet therapy, which is hormone treatment, another hormone drug taken orally, anti-cancer drug, and the chemotherapy. Before the chemotherapy started, I spoke to, and this is 2 months after my diagnosis, I spoke to a colleague who told me that he had cancer. I didn't know that beforehand, and he said, "You should go to the Maggies." That was the first person to say go to the Maggies, and I went to the Maggies. I went with my wife because I was quite nervous first time round. We went to the Maggies together, spoke to a couple of members of staff, Stuart, the cancer specialist nurse, who was incredibly helpful, Ian, who I found out was involved in fundraising, who was also incredibly helpful. But most important of all, I spoke to other outpatients there, outpatients, all different ages and stages of cancer, all different experiences, all different therapies and prognoses and diagnoses. But I also realised that the Maggie's was lots of different things rolled into one, that it was a resource centre, and there was fantastic booklets on understanding chemotherapy and understanding prostate cancer that I found really useful. There was a kind of tea room and interaction place, but there was also a gym, a area that was used for exercise classes, which are very important for my type of cancer, which carries a risk through the treatment, the hormone therapy, of osteoporosis or fractures. So I ended up doing exercise classes, twice weekly for a period of time. Once the chemo finished, I realised that some people during chemo were still going to the Maggies, and that seemed very brave to me. I felt I had to kind of shield myself with the chemo, so I wasn't at the Maggies much during the chemo. But for the 9 months, when the chemo finished in March 2024 through till December 2024, I was very active at the Maggies. Then I did a course called Where Now. That was a brilliant course, nutrition and psychology and mental health, all kinds of things. It was really, really useful. We had fantastic input from, you know, Sarah, the psychologist, and Hilary and other members of staff. It was really, really enlightening. Most enlightening was the interaction with other patients, some of whom I hadn't seen through the Maggie's exercise classes, so I met new Maggie's mates there, and we got on well, and I thought, this will stand me in good stead, this will strengthen me. And I needed that strength, because on Christmas Eve I got some very bad news. I went to see my oncologist. I already had a hint that something was not right, because my blood tests were showing a problem. This is 9 months after my chemo. I saw my oncologist, and he gave me the bad news that my cancer had spread, that the chemo had failed, that the hormone therapy had failed, that my cancer was no longer, as the term is, castration resistant. It's no longer responding to the hormone therapy. So after that, my wife and I knew what to do. Before we went home, before we told friends and family, before we thought about wrapping Christmas presents, which we still had to finish off, we went to the Maggies. I spoke to my Maggie's mates, people in the same boat as me who'd had similar experiences. Because the thing about stage 4 cancer, terminal cancer, is you never hear the dreaded words, the cancer's come back, because you know it's never going away, but you do hope that you're going to at some point have, you know, a kind of a period of quiet, or a period of rest, or be buying some time. In this occasion I seem not to be getting the time that I'd hoped for. So I spoke to my Maggie's mates, and Alec, who I'd spoken to in my first visit, said to me, something else will turn up, there'll be another therapy, and he was somebody who'd been in the system for a long time. So I took heart from that, and I'm glad I did, because within a few weeks I found myself sitting in the house. The phone went, it was my oncologist to say I'd, you know, been put forward for this new treatment, lutetium-177, a radioactive isotope known in America as Pluvicto, that I would have that treatment every 6 weeks over an 8-month period, starting 31st of March, finishing 31st of October, and being lucky again, as with the chemo, I had very little by way of side effects. My side effects were mild. Occasionally I had nausea, occasionally I had neuropathy, but generally speaking I did well out of the treatment. That treatment finished now just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm awaiting blood tests and bone scans and news of how I've got on. But I feel very positive. I'll be going to the Maggies next week to do the classes, and I still feel the Maggies has just been a really vital lifeline for me. And the only thing is, I wish I'd known about it earlier. I think it's the first port of call for people who have had a diagnosis, is not to have the worry or internalise it. And we all do it, because for me it was almost like thinking about scabby touch. I didn't want to sit in a room full of people with cancer. I wanted to deal with this on my own, and I realised that's a form of denial. As soon as you step into the Maggies, you're owning up to what you've already accepted, which is you have cancer and you need to talk about it.